So we're welcoming a high-level manager from Atlassian today. Keshav flew all the way from Sydney to Gdansk first, right? Where Atlassian has a development team.
Yep.
And you landed in Frankfurt on Saturday, right?
Right.
Yeah. And thank you so much for taking jet lag. And I know you're going back and coming. Is anyone here going to go to Barcelona, European Atlassian Summit? 1, 2. Okay, and then a couple of, I think we have 20 people. Sebastian, is it 20 from Seibert Media?
Okay.
Going there. You're going to be there as well.
I will be there.
So jet lag's going to be back for you.
It's okay.
Thank you so much for taking the long journey. Without further ado, Keshav Puttaswamy from Atlassian.
Okay. Danke schön. Guten Tag. Ich heiße Keshav Puttaswamy. Ich habe bei Atlassian seit 6 Monaten gearbeitet. And then I'm going to switch to English. I just wanted to thank Martin and everybody from Seibert Media for having me here. It's been really wonderful. I've had a great time. I came on Saturday and had a chance to see Wiesbaden a little bit, but also had time, a chance to spend time with folks at Seibert yesterday. What a great team and a great company, so really appreciate having me here. Thank you. So just to give you some background, I started in Atlassian 6 months ago. Prior to that, I was at Microsoft for 20 years, where I had a chance to work on a few different products, Microsoft Project, SharePoint, Yammer, and more recently I was working on the Windows and Devices Group, the engineering system for the Windows and Devices Group, which is about 15,000 engineers as we were trying to revamp the engineering system for Windows. So that was an exciting journey, but I'm really thrilled to be at Atlassian now, and my role is as the head of the product management team, so for the server products. So my job is to lead the product managers, and we define the strategy and direction for all of the Atlassian server products. And by server products, it's all the products that are self-managed by our customers. So this includes, obviously, any server products, data center. And you know, one of the things that I thought, just to kind of get us going, I just wanted to reemphasize our platform commitment as Atlassian. If you follow the news, I'm sure you hear a lot about the cloud. And of course, we're passionate about the cloud, and we're investing in the cloud. But we really know that a lot of our customers, and as we saw this morning, most of our customers here today are using our server products. And so I wanted to make sure everyone understood we're committed to our server products as well as data center. And I wouldn't be here if you know, we weren't investing in server, because my job is to really drive innovation in the server product space. So we're going to spend the next 45 minutes walking through sort of an update on server. We'll cover what's new. Some of it you might be aware. These are latest updates that we've been doing in the product itself. But as Martin was talking about, one of the things we do want to do is talk a little bit more about the roadmap as well. What are we investing in? What are we prioritizing in the product team? So I'm hoping to give you a sort of a sneak peek into areas that we're invested in. And as always, we're really looking for feedback from you. So grab me afterwards. Happy to take questions along the way. Love to hear what's important to you, because ultimately our job is to make you successful. And so our priorities are really led and driven by your requirements. Just to step back a little bit, the way we think about our investments in the server products are really around 3 broad themes. The first area is around our productivity. So this is really at the heart of Atlassian. We grew up with end users embracing our products, and we're all about productivity for our users. And so that's a key area of investment for us. The second part, as we've kind of continued to grow, administration is something we're increasingly focused on. We know that your deployments are getting bigger and bigger, and managing our Atlassian products, especially at scale, we talk about agility at scale. To do that effectively, we really need to invest more in our administration. So that's sort of the second big area. And the third is around data center. So when it comes to data center, sometimes people are a little bit confused. How many of you know what data center products are? Raise your hands. Half. How many of you are actually using a data center product today? Okay. So it sounds like about half of you know what it is. Just want to clarify, data center is our offering that's focused around mission critical needs for customers. So when we think about our overall investments, we make a lot of just overall investments in the product. Those go into server. But where we really focus with our data center products are specific needs that when the Atlassian products are mission critical, we really look at data center as our offering to address those needs. So it isn't just for large customers. When we think about data center, we really have 4 key value props. The first is high availability. So we know our downtime is a big challenge, and so we want to make sure we offer a solution that gives you high availability and disaster recovery. The second area is performance at scale. As your deployments grow, you want to be able to manage that load. You want to make sure end users have good performance. The third is deployment flexibility. So we know, and we've increasingly seen customers deploying products in different places. On-premise, on their own hardware is a very common scenario, but increasingly we're seeing customers looking to deploy in AWS and in other cloud locations. So we want to support that. And then finally, authentication and control. So those are sort of the 4 key tenets of data center. So what we're going to do is dive in now to talk about each of our product families. And what we'll do is spend about 15 minutes going through. We'll start with the Jira family, and then we'll get into Confluence and HipChat, and then finally developer tools. So we'll try to cover all of these. Maybe just to help me frame this and gauge your interest, how many of you use Jira family products? Okay, all of you. So I'll definitely cover that. Confluence and or HipChat? Okay, most of you. What about developer tools? Bitbucket, Bamboo? Okay, some. All right. So I'll make sure I cover all of them, maybe focus a little bit more on Jira and Confluence, but also I'll make sure we cover some of our investments around developer tools as well. Okay, so we'll start with Jira, and for each of these, I'm going to orient the presentation around those 3 themes around productivity, administration, and data center. So hopefully you can follow me along, and I'll call out things that we've updated recently, so new things that we've shipped, and then I'll talk about some of the things that we're working on, so roadmap stuff, and I'll try to be as clear about which ones we've actually delivered and which ones we're working on. Okay, so with Jira, and I'm not covering everything that's in the product, so just some of the highlights from my perspective. For Jira and the Jira family, so this covers Jira software, Jira Service Desk, and portfolio for Jira. By the way, some more show of hands. I want everybody to stretch. How many of you use Jira Service Desk? A few. And what about portfolio for Jira? A couple. Okay. So as far as Jira itself, one of the biggest enhancements we made around for productivity was the rich text editor. I'm really personally glad that this investment came in right as I joined, because I'm not big into wiki markups. I am familiar with it, but having a rich text editor so I don't have to understand wiki markup but still put rich, meaningful information in the issue descriptions was really important to me. This is something that we shipped as a labs feature in 7.2, and then we released it in 7.3. From a service desk perspective, we've been spending a fair amount of energy over the last year or so. Some of the enhancements we've made, first of all, around customer orgs. So this is the idea that you can define organizations and put your users or customers of Jira Service Desk into these organizations. So if you have multiple projects and you want to put these set of customers in these different projects, you can just put them in an organization and then assign them to multiple projects. You don't have to add all the users individually in each of those projects. So it's an efficiency gain. The second is notifications. When notifications come from Jira Service Desk, being able to customize it, being able to change the look and feel, but also customize the text. That's sort of around the notification piece. And then templates. So a lot of customers are new to Jira Service Desk, and we want to make it easy for them to get started. And so the best way we can do that is to provide templates that are tailored toward certain use cases. So whether it's external support or IT Service Desk, we've shipped a bunch of templates now in Jira Service Desk that make it easier. So if you've been using or trying to use Jira software to address sort of service desk type scenarios, I encourage you to take a look at Jira Service Desk, which is really tailored to address that scenario. And then on the portfolio side, so portfolio, just to give people an introduction, we've seen this need grow over time where we have lots of projects in Jira, and a lot of times you're trying to get a view of, sort of a portfolio view of all the different projects that are going on in your organization. And it's hard to do that just with Jira. And so what portfolio does is you can create a plan and pull in different projects or boards and basically get a quick view of that portfolio and do planning at that portfolio level. So the latest release of 2.2, a couple of new enhancements we added. One was around multiple scenarios. So you can create a plan that brings in a bunch of projects into portfolio, and now you can create multiple scenarios, and that allows you to do what-ifs. So you can try out, well, what if I move this project out? What impact does it have on my portfolio? The second is around baselines. This is another top request. When you start working on your projects, you actually want to be able to say, okay, now when I step back at look at my portfolio, how am I doing against my baseline? So being able to, while the projects are in flight, compare your project progress against a baseline is, again, a common request. So those are all updates that we've made in the last 6 months in the Jira family. So what are we working on now? So some of the areas we're focused on around productivity, the first is what we call Kanban backlog. So operational teams use Kanban. It's a very popular way to manage your projects. But we also found that the backlog feature that's in Scrum is really useful, even for operational teams. And so we introduced this feature called Kanban backlog in our cloud products. And so this is something that you'll see us do in Server. A lot of times, we might release an experiment on features in the cloud, and once we iterate on it and get feedback and make sure it's right, then we take some of those best features. Again, we're really focused on the Server customer base, and then we prioritize still, but we take the learnings and the features that we built in the cloud and then bring them to Server. So you'll see this pattern play out, and the Kanban backlog is a great example of us learning from cloud and bringing it into Server. The second is around notifications. If you are like me, I joined Atlassian 6 months ago, and I came to my inbox and I started looking at all the mail, and I started getting spammed by tons of notifications from Confluence, from Jira, and it was a bit overwhelming. It took me a while to set up all the rules to put those notifications into other places so I can actually get work done. But in Jira, this is we do want to stay up to date, but can we do better in terms of, instead of sending you tiny fragments and little notifications for every little thing, can we do better and make it more organized so you can still stay up to date without flooding your inbox? So on the Jira Service Desk side, one of the areas we've been investing in is canned responses. So this is something that, again, it should give you a sense. There's a theme with Jira Service Desk. It's all about efficiency, productivity. One of the common scenarios is, hey, I want to be able to set up canned responses. So I've already kind of defined the response, and then I can use those canned responses to essentially respond to tickets. So it's a common request, and it's something that we're excited to bring to Service Desk. And then on the portfolio side, so today portfolio helps you pull together projects into a portfolio plan. But as customers are starting to use portfolio, the next level is, okay, I can pull a bunch of projects in, but I want to actually do things at the program level. I want even a broader view of the world. And actually the scenarios at the program level are a little bit different than at the portfolio plan level. So we've really been thinking about what can we enable at the program level that essentially rolls up information from plans, portfolio plans, into a higher level view. So it's a great place to look at your strategic objectives and see if the projects are aligning with those. So I'm just going to keep going. If people have questions, feel free to raise, and if I need to clarify anything, yeah.
Why are you always differentiating between Jira Service Desk and other Jira? I think you kind of part the products. Are you saying 10 responses is just Jira Service Desk? But this is a feature that is needed in all of your Jira releases. So I experienced many times you're just having a feature that is needed for more or in more places just in one thing.
That's great feedback, so I'll just repeat the comment. So the question was, why are we differentiating certain features for example, Service Desk when it might be useful for all the entire product? So in general, we try not to, if it's applicable for all of Jira, then that's what we would do. So rich text editor is a good example. That's something in Jira as a whole. I think the canned responses is a good example, or a good question. I don't know the exact answer to your question as to whether it's something that we can make available more broadly. I know the scenario that we had in mind was very focused on Service Desk, and that's where we got the requirement. But that's a good one that I'll take back to the team and share back and say, hey, is this something that we can actually make available and in a way that makes sense for everyone? So it's a good point. Our intent isn't to segment features if it's something that should be in Jira, but I'll take that feedback back to the team.
What can we expect in terms of these simplified boards on Jira Core? I don't know if they were a cloud feature or a labs feature, but at least they're not currently in as far as I know. Will they come, or will you do something about the agile greenhopper thing to be available?
The Jira Core boards?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's one of those, I think you'll hear me say this multiple times. We're always looking to see what the response is in the cloud, and we're looking at that as input. But ultimately, we're trying to drive the priorities based on what we're hearing from our server customers. So it is something that we are going to consider. Obviously, we're not, at the moment working on that. But I think it's one of those, and this could apply to other things that you see in the cloud, where a common question would be, well, I see this feature in the cloud, why isn't it in server? And we'll absolutely look at it, and we'll evaluate it and prioritize it with the rest of what we see as sort of the broader server requirements.
The question is more how agile and the simplified boards would go together or merge or not. I mean, to have the same or similar user experience.
Even in the cloud, is your question like just a general question of how those two worlds might meet? So you have agile boards and...
It sounds like an intermediate workaround solution.
Yeah, and that's one where I think our approach is, that's where we will wait and see how the cloud team kind of resolves that, and we experiment and iterate there. And once we feel like we have a good model in place that makes sense for customers, that's tested with customers, we'll look at evaluating that for server. Okay, so that was productivity, sort of as a theme. I'm going to switch over to administration. So on the administration side, there's sort of two thematic areas that we're investing in, and you'll see it in sort of, we've made progress to some degree now, and we're going to continue. It's a journey. Both of these things are journeys. The first area is project level administration. So we've talking to Jira customers, especially as the deployments have grown, we've seen the Jira admin, the poor Jira admin is becoming a bottleneck to the organization. So everything that has to happen from an administrative perspective, you have to go talk to the Jira admin, and it's really a challenge. And it's sort of, when we talk about agility at scale, it's becoming a hurdle to agility at scale. So we're on this journey to address this, and we think the right approach is to provide a mechanism for the administrator to delegate some parts of administration, if you will, at the project level. Now, again, the administrator has control. They don't have to do this if they don't want to, if it doesn't suit their company's workflow and process. But we do think this is going to be a common need, especially as deployments grow. Now, it's not something that we're going to solve overnight, to be clear. I think it's an iterative process, but our first step was something we released in 7.3, and this is where we enable the Jira admins to delegate sort of workflow, certain parts of the workflow. In particular, they can add status and manage transitions. So being able to allow project level admin to do that is sort of our first step in that area. Now, I want to be clear, we're careful in that if you do delegate, you can only change workflow for projects that are only affecting your projects. So for example, if there are shared workflows, so a project level admin can't change something that might affect other people's projects and workflows. So we're careful about that. The second area is around, in general, around installs and upgrades. We hear a lot of pain from customers around the installation process. We're continuing to drive new releases, hopefully better features, but if we can't make the install and upgrade process easier, then that becomes a hurdle for customers to get access to those capabilities. And this is, again, one of those journeys. I'll talk a little bit about it next as well, but our first step is when you update or upgrade your Jira instance, and let's say you launch Jira and it fails for some reason, then we want to offer you what we're calling a safer startup kind of mode that allows you to essentially turn off the add-ons, because often it's the add-ons that there might be some add-on that's causing this trouble. So you can start up Jira in safe mode, if you will, and then turn on the add-ons one by one to help troubleshoot what might be causing the problem. So sort of leading into things that we're working on now, it's sort of a continuation of that journey. So in terms of project level administration, the next step we're looking at is delegating to the project admin the ability to configure screens. So we have a long list of things, and we're working through that one by one. So this is sort of next step in that journey. And then on the installation experience itself, we've been focused on doing a couple things. Firstly, we want to introduce pre-upgrade checks so that even before you start off the upgrade process, so today you don't know whether the upgrade is going to work or not until you actually start upgrading. What we want to do is give you this ability to run pre-upgrade checks that will tell you before you start whether there's going to be any problems. And then when you're going through that upgrade process, if you see errors, we're investing in better messaging in ways that you can troubleshoot, just clear error messages along the way that help you fix issues as you're going through that upgrade process. I'm going to pause briefly on the administration front. Okay, we'll keep going. So the next areas are on data center. So with data center, again, if you remember, this is our we're focusing our investments in data center around those 4 areas of high availability, performance at scale, deployment flexibility, and authentication control. So recently we've released the support for SAML and SSO. This allows you, hopefully, are people familiar with sort of what SAML is? It's basically an identity provider. A lot of companies use different identity providers, whether it's Okta or Azure Active Directory, et cetera. And what this support allows you to do is, instead of having, so for admins, if they have policies around with their identity providers where they have set up multi-factor auth, by connecting and leveraging SAML SSO, you basically get that for your Atlassian products. And then for end users, that means they don't have to remember different passwords for different applications. So by connecting to SAML SSO identity provider, users log in there, they get authenticated by the identity provider, they only remember one username and password, and then they're able to log in this case, to Jira as well. The second area is zero downtime upgrades. So this is another one of those journeys, and we're taking our first step in that journey. We released that first step with Jira 7.3. So the idea is, when you have downtime, sucks, nobody likes it, but upgrades do impact and have downtime. And what we want to do is eliminate that downtime. So users can always access Jira whether you're upgrading or not. And so to enable that in data center, we allow you to go through the upgrade process. So you can essentially go from Jira 7.3 to 7.4 while without bringing your server down, so users still have access. Now, what we're doing actually in the first instance is we want to support zero downtime upgrades when you're going from bug fix release to bug fix release. That means what we've released right now is you can go from 7.3.1 to 7.3.2. So not feature releases, but just bug fixes. And I'll talk about what we're doing next in the next slide. But again, a bit of a journey with zero downtime upgrades. The second area, the other investment we made is around support for data center in AWS. How many of you are using Amazon Web Services to host your server data center? 1, 2, okay. So it kind of varies, but we're seeing significant demand from customers that are looking to move their infrastructure from their on-premise sort of infrastructure into a private cloud solution, and AWS being the most popular one. And so what our support with Data Center does, we already released this for Jira Software, and we released Jira Service Desk just a few months ago. And what we provide is what's called a quick start, which means within minutes, you can literally, with a few clicks, have a full data center instance of Jira or Jira Service Desk up and running in AWS. So it's a combination of what's called quick start in Amazon Web Services, and it comes with a set of cloud formation templates. Those are the things that we provide. And so the other benefit is auto scale. So you can set up AWS such that as your load increases, you don't have to worry about provisioning additional nodes. You can set it up with the CloudFormation template so that Amazon kind of takes care of that for you. So as load increases, additional nodes get provisioned. So it's really a sweet spot. So if you're looking at data center, using AWS for running your data center instance could be interesting. So what are we working on? We talked about zero downtime upgrades and that being a journey. So the first step was bug fix releases. The next thing is feature releases. So we want to be able to we want you to be able to upgrade from one feature release to the next one. So that's like going from 7.3 to 7.4. And that's what we're working on right now. And again, there's going to be some additional investments further down the road to fully realize sort of this promise of zero downtime upgrades. And then the other area that we've been working on is around performance at scale. Yeah, question. That is a data center only feature. Zero downtime upgrades is data center only because it relies on the fact that you have multiple nodes, this clustering technology. That's what data center is based on. So you can start upgrading different nodes while requests get routed to the other nodes until you've got everything upgraded, and then you can essentially turn on the next version. So it is a data center only feature. All of these, so the slide that I talked about before and the slide are all data center features. So the performance at scale piece, a key value proposition of data center is to allow you to scale. So if you have, as your load increases, being able to have that clustering allows you to distribute that load and have high performance as the number of users grow. But we've found a bunch of areas where we can make this even better. And one area is around background reindexing. We call it Lexo rank rebalance. But this is something that is an intensive process and can impact sort of overall performance while this is happening. So we've made a bunch of improvements. If there's any data center customers here, they would immediately recognize this challenge. Okay, so that was Jira and Jira family. I'm going to move on to Confluence now. Confluence and HipChat. All right, so we'll go through the same process. We'll talk about productivity, then administration, and then data center. Productivity, the biggest change that we've brought in for Confluence, does everyone know about collaborative editing at this point? Not everyone. Okay. Who doesn't know what collaborative editing is in Confluence yet? Okay. Let me kind of share you my own story about collaborative editing. So this is a pretty significant capability that was introduced in Confluence 6.0, and honestly, it changes how you work. I think so. Collaborative editing is you can go to a Confluence page now, and multiple people can all edit it. You know, similar to, let's say, if you're working on a Google Doc. And we've noticed that it changes how people are working, because all of a sudden you have people jumping in, working together. It seems to speed things up. We actually have noticed it's starting to rewire almost the way sort of communication is happening and collaboration is happening within Atlassian for sure. So it's a really significant new capability. Can't wait for you customers to actually get to 6.0 or 6.1. We'll talk about that briefly. But you know, it's one of those where once you start using it, I'd love to hear how it's changing the way you work in your organizations. In addition to collaborative editing, we've released a couple of additional capabilities. One is around page hierarchies. So if you use Confluence heavily and you build out hierarchies, then you can actually copy that whole hierarchy and basically create a copy of it. So I've personally used this recently. We were preparing for the US Summit when I first started, and so we had these frequently asked questions. So we had a server level frequently asked questions, and then for each product, Jira, Confluence, etc., we had basically a child page that had frequently asked questions, and we wanted to put this together so anybody from Atlassian knows, you know, how to address these questions. Now we're preparing for Barcelona, and all I had to do was copy that and paste it, and have a running start to you know, getting ready for Barcelona Summit. You can also delete these page hierarchies as well. The third one, honestly, is the one that I'm most excited about. Well, after collaborative editing, it's around playbooks. So you might have heard about this. One of the amazing things that I've really learned to appreciate about Atlassian is we're not just about shipping products. We obviously ship products, Confluence, and so on. But it's as much about shipping a way of working as well. So we experiment a lot around teamwork, and we learn a bunch of things just within Atlassian itself. And then we try to package that up in ways that our customers can benefit from and potentially use. So we call these playbooks. And these are literally these playbooks we just published as part of Confluence 6.1. So the release went out last week. And we've essentially released a whole series of playbooks. And they're in many languages, including German. So it's supported in German as well. And these are awesome. In fact, within Atlassian, we use these playbooks. We don't have any other version. Literally, we've taken exactly what we use. And when we, so an example would be what we call a decision register, DAISY. So it's how we make decisions, and we basically package it up into a Confluence blueprint. But anytime somebody needs to make a big decision, we literally use the same one that's published publicly on our website. So there's a variety of different playbooks. I encourage you to take a look at them and explore. And there's sessions at the previous summit, and there's a lot of content on our website. I encourage you to take a look at them. Also at the user group meeting this evening, I'll be sharing my 3 favorite playbooks and some stories about how we use it in Atlassian. Okay, I'll just touch on HipChat, and then we'll talk about sort of administration. So on HipChat, the biggest enhancement we released was around better video support. So now with HipChat Server, you can have 20 people invited to a video chat, and we've made the experience better. So you can password protect it, you can customize the layout, you can figure out who the participants are, just a better overall experience. So we have another system as well within Atlassian, but we've seen people switching over to just using HipChat more and more for ad hoc meetings. Okay, so in terms of areas that we're working on, I'd say collaborative editing, we're just scratching the surface. We brought in this capability of multiple people working on the same page together, but we found that there's a host of scenarios that we can build on now that we have collaborative in editing and the technology in place. So the first feature we're looking at seriously is just smoothing the process of inviting somebody else to edit. So you're on a page, you're creating it, you want somebody else to join you. You can kind of do it today, but it's not very obvious. With invite to edit, we want to make it easy, so you can just say, hey, Joe, I want you to come and join me, and let's work on this page together. Another area that we've gotten a ton of feedback on is search. We know a lot of people put a lot of content into Confluence. They upload documents and so on. So we want to be able to do a better job doing file extraction, pulling the content out of those documents, indexing it, so that when you search, it's not just searching sort of the content that's on the page, but also content that's in the documents. On the administration side, there's a few updates, especially in the 6.0 release. So I talked about Safer Startup. We released it in Jira. We're also releasing it in Confluence. I'm not going to go through it. And then the second one is setting up collaborative editing. How many customers have gone to 6.0 so far? Couple. Okay. Well, the good news for you is that for everyone else who didn't go to 6.0 is that what we found is the early adopters on 6.0, there were some challenges with configuring collaborative editing. I see some nodding heads. No challenges? Okay. It just varies. Your mileage might vary. But there were some challenges with configuring it. So we found a bunch of customers were actually turning it off because it was not working for them. And so we spent a bunch of time sort of simplifying the configuration of collaborative editing. So if you went to 6.0 and for some reason turned off collaborative editing because you couldn't configure it right, with 6.1 we made it a lot easier. And of course, if you're going directly from 5.9 or whatever to 6.1, then hopefully you won't experience that challenge at all. For HipChat, again, SAML SSO, we talked about sort of the benefit of connecting to a standard identity provider. You can do that for HipChat as well, so users don't have to remember multiple passwords. Administrators get better sort of authentication, security, and so on. Okay, so on the administration front for Confluence, a lot of the focus is just around the install experience. We're doing a bunch of investments in Jira. We also believe we need to make similar improvements to Confluence. Just yesterday, I was talking to some customers that were talking about how long they plan their installation process and upgrade process. And some of those things need to happen. Fully understand. You want to make sure when you upgrade that everything still works. But we can make, so there's things we can make improvements there as well, but just the installation or upgrade process itself should be easier. And so we're looking at ways to simplify that, giving you various tools, pre-upgrade checks, better error messages and handling. We're just double-clicking into that install experience and really doing anything we can to smoothen that process out. So on the data center front, we made two big updates with Confluence 6.1, SAML SSO, we'll talk about that, and then the support for Confluence Data Center on AWS. So we talked about Jira Service Desk and Jira. We now have Confluence as well, so you can deploy within minutes a Confluence Data Center and set it up for auto-scaling. So what are we working on next with data center? More around performance at scale. One of the things that we learned from the Bitbucket team, and I'll touch on that briefly, is a test framework. We call it E3, Elastic Experiment Executor. So this is, we've gotten a ton of great feedback for Bitbucket. So the idea is you can stand up an instance of data center in AWS and run a bunch of performance tests to use it to see whether your own instance, the way you're set up, what the performance will look like with Confluence. Does that make sense? So it's a testing framework that you can stand up, you can change the dials, and then it gives you results of, okay, this is how fast load time is when you have 1,000 users and you put this type of load. It basically gives you a way to test out and play out your customer scenario, your scenarios on a different environment. And the second area of investment is around HipChat Data Center. So the biggest feedback we've gotten on HipChat server, one of them is just performance, but the second is there's a 5,000 user limit right now with HipChat, and a lot of that has to do with the architecture that we have currently today. With Data Center, we can take advantage of clustering, and so we're going to allow users to grow past that. So there's no limit in terms of how you scale. At least HipChat, the goal is that the product isn't limiting you from scaling. It's your own sort of requirements. Okay, so I'm going to pause briefly. We talked about Confluence and HipChat. Any questions on what we've done or any of the roadmap stuff before we switch to developer tools?
Yes, for HipChat, Confluence and Jira seem to be products that are kind of unrivaled in the market. So I often encounter people who ask me, can you tell me why SharePoint is something that I want to replace by Confluence or this Linchpin thing, which I can easily answer.
Yeah.
Same goes for Jira. Like in Europe, soccer is pretty popular. So the next soccer team after Jira, I don't know, plays in the 3rd league or something. For HipChat, there's like a ton of alternatives around. Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts chat, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Telegram, all like really...
Telegram, you said?
Yeah. Ever heard of Telegram?
No.
Okay.
You weren't referring to the old... Just kidding. Okay.
I'm going to give you a link later. However, there's a lot of instant and group messaging solutions out there. How is Atlassian going about this? As this is a really hot pot that you're in. Are you going to survive how are you going to do that? I would ask you to give our customers some confidence to buy this product.
Okay, that's a loaded question. Look, I think, when we think about HipChat Server, which is what I'm going to focus on, we also have HipChat Cloud. But really where we're positioning HipChat Server, first of all, it's a behind the firewall solution. So when you think about if you really need a behind the firewall group communication tool, there aren't quite as many options. So that's number one. And then secondly, I think, and this might apply more broadly as well, but really where we differentiate is our integration, and this is where we will continue to invest in. So if you use other Atlassian tools, if you use Confluence and Jira, and you want seamless workflow with those tools, we see HipChat as being the best experience for that. So really those are the two things that we're going to focus in on. As far as how that plays out in the market, we'll see how that goes. But we do see our customers, our HipChat customers, those are the things that they ask. In addition to, of course, performance, reliability, scale, and other features. But those are the things that make them want HipChat Server over other alternatives. Okay. Yeah.
So in terms of integration into SharePoint, Outlook, Office, or only your own products?
Oh, for HipChat? The question is, what about integrating with other products? I mean, HipChat has an open model for integrating with any tools. So absolutely, we'd love for better integration with those as well. But I guess to Martin's question of what is unique, because you can do that arguably in those other tools as well. So where we will look to differentiate is even deeper integrations and scenarios, enabling scenarios that both we're motivated to make possible, and it's also the thing that our customers are asking for the most. All right, so we're going to go into developer tools. I'm going to keep this a little bit shorter. I'm not going to talk about every bullet. If you have questions, we can take it offline as well. I just wanted to frame it briefly so that I want to put you into the context in which we're working and how we're thinking about our product investments. So one of the big sort of trends, if you will, but something that we're seeing increasingly, and you're going to hear Atlassian talk about more and more, is DevOps. So DevOps is a culture, a philosophy, a way of working, all of those things. It's really trying to bring the best of sort of agile software development methodologies with sort of operational excellence, and really bringing those two together. And so when we think about DevOps, it means it hinges a lot on collaboration. So for companies that are doing successful DevOps, it means these two parts of the worlds of development and operations really work hand in hand. So collaboration is a key part of it, and integration across the tools. So increasingly, things have to be seamless, going from a Jira issue to documentation in Confluence or into Bitbucket and developer tools. So when we think about our investments in developer tools, we're really looking at how can we enable and accelerate our customers' use cases around DevOps. So this is something to keep in mind. DevOps is not just about developer tools. It extends beyond that. But certainly for developer tools, we want to focus on that better integration and enabling sort of the tighter loop between development and operations. So a couple of areas that we have released more recently. Bitbucket, we've introduced this notion of iterative reviews. So Bitbucket, we feel, has the best sort of reviewing pull request capabilities in the market, and we continue to make that better. We think that's a key part of collaboration is, hey, I wrote some code, and I want others to look at my code and make sure it's okay. And this enhancement means that Oftentimes what happens is I write some code, I do a pull request, other people review it, they give some feedback, they say, well, you should change this thing, and then it goes back, I make those changes and send it back, and then that poor reviewer has to then dig through and say, well, what did he do, what was the feedback, what's that piece that they just updated? Iterative review kind of makes that simpler. So just more efficient, because we know developers spend a lot of time reviewing other people's code. The second scenario is around in-browser editing. You have a small change to make, maybe it's a script file. Today, if you didn't have in-browser editing, you would have to clone the repo in order to make a little change. Whereas with in-browser editing, you can just write in the browser, make that change, and then it still integrates with all the other processes, the branch workflows and pull requests and so on. So really a couple of key productivity improvements. And the third is Git LFS. So LFS stands for Large File Support. It's something that Bitbucket introduced. I think the simplest way to describe it is Git is an awesome source control system, and it handles diffs, if you will, very smartly. So if you're making, I don't know how far I should go into Git, but really the principle of Git is we pull down the entire repo. Everyone has the full code base on their machine. And so the only way that's possible is if Git is really good about changes. So if every change suddenly was making it bigger and bigger, the repo size would get too big. So that works great for code. But when you put in binaries or large files, Git can't handle it. There's no diff that it can do. So suddenly this every version that you're making bloats the repo. Large file support basically pulls that out. And so you keep the large files out of the repo. That's not something that you need like core Git capabilities anyway to support. Anyway, that's Git LFS. People that are using it love it in Bitbucket. It really makes a difference. Bamboo didn't support that. So if you had a Bitbucket instance with Git LFS and you were trying to build, Bamboo didn't support Git LFS. Now it does. Okay, that was a lot of explanation. Okay, so this one I'm going to skip. We've made a bunch of improvements in Crucible and Fisheye in terms of comments and workflow API. If you have questions, we can chat about it more later. I did want to touch on some of the key areas that are upcoming. So one of the areas that we were chatting yesterday, I was talking to Oliver, and we're talking about Bamboo. And you might have followed along. If you were paying attention, you may not have seen as much sort of investments in Bamboo. We're really doubling down in Bamboo because we see it's a core part of delivering on the DevOps capabilities that our customers want, continuous integration, continuous delivery. And sort of one of the centerpieces of that is the notion of configuration as code, so that you basically can store your build plans as code, versioned, and it's really how you can deploy quickly, and it's sort of integrated into your continuous integration and delivery processes. So this is a significant investment we're making. The second is mobile development. Bamboo's traditionally known for Java-based development, but we're making sure we support other types of development as well. So if you're writing mobile code, we want to make sure Bamboo is the best solution for that. And then we talked about integration, especially between Bitbucket and Bamboo. We want to make that better. So for example, if you have a pull request, maybe you want to have a build trigger automatically. Or if you're in Bitbucket, you want to see the status of your builds. We just want to reduce the friction. So instead of having to jump between one tool and the other, if a developer is working in Bitbucket, they can just stay in Bitbucket. They get the information that they need right in there. Okay, and then we'll briefly touch on compliance. So another area that we're looking at is just applying policies. So if you have Bitbucket, you have lots of repos, you have a certain policy you want to apply to all the projects that are, and all the repos that are part of a particular project, we make it easy. So you set policies at the project level, and all the repos that are part of that inherit those policies. So maintaining and being compliant is a lot easier now with Bitbucket. Finally, around data center, I talked about Bitbucket sort of innovating in that E3 model with test scripts using AWS. That's gotten a tremendous amount of feedback and positive feedback. And then SAML and SSO. To really complete the picture, now all the data center products support SAML and SSO, so you're not restricted in any way. And then the last thing I'll sort of touch on is looking forward, we want to continue to improve a capability that we introduced in Bitbucket a few months ago, or a year ago, I think. It was called smart mirroring. So if you have a scenario, this is fairly typical. So you have development, maybe that's happening in Germany. You also have some developers, I don't know, in India or some other place far away from here. Well, if you just have your code sitting in one place, maybe in Germany, then the poor developers in India, when they try to clone your code, it's going to take a long time because of the network speed and all those things. So smart mirroring, what it does is allows you to create a mirror, and that enables you to, and Bitbucket basically then makes sure that your repo in your main center is mirrored over in another data center, maybe in India. So your developers can just do a clone from India, and it's super fast. So that's smart mirroring, and what we're doing is making it even smarter. So we want to improve the resilience, ease of use. Today there's some rough edges because you have to remember two different URLs, one for fetching and another one for push. And then we also want to simplify CI integration. So if you want to kick off builds, you want to know when the mirroring is complete. So you don't want to kick off a build when half of the mirroring has happened. So sort of being smart about that and knowing when to kick it off, that's sort of the goal there. Okay, so I've covered a lot of different things here. I just want to step back a little bit and kind of make sure everyone understands what journey we're on. You know, I love our mission at Atlassian, and it's to unleash the potential in every team. My team and the server team, we're all about this mission, and our focus is on the server products. So we really are on this journey with you together. And you know, I've shared a bunch of investments here, but I'm just one person. We have a whole team there working very hard, and we're going to continue to invest in our server products. We're, you know, yeah. No, I can't verify. They all have contributed in some manner at some level, but no, I can't verify that. These guys over here, I don't know who these people are. It's just representative of the level of investment we're making in server. It's you know, just in the time that I've been here, our team has grown tremendously. So I'm really excited about that. And it's not just product engineers. We have technical account managers. We have enterprise advocates. We have premier support. A lot of different people. Yeah.
Gave me a big pie. How many would be working on a server?
That's a very complicated question, actually, because you know there's many ways to answer that question, and the reason I think it's complicated is because you know when we talk about people working on server, we're also building on investments that the cloud team is working on as well. So we take advantage of a lot of work that happens there. I talked about all that experimentation, like Kanban backlog as an example. Is it the server team working on it? No, but we're going to take advantage of all that effort that went into it and then bring that into server. So how should we count whether that's server investment or not? It's really hard to say. Also, when we think about all of the other people that are involved in the business, whether it's you know TAMs or premier support, I honestly don't know even what that number is. But even just the engineering team, so I know that the product team and the engineering team has grown significantly, but I will say I'll share open company, no bullshit. Wendell actually sent a mail, just some people might know Wendell. Just the other day, one of our values is play as a team. And he just commended sort of the work around collaborative editing in particular, because we've gotten tremendous feedback around it. And it was only possible because the cloud team and the server team worked hand in hand. And so there was actually a lot of effort that went in for collaborative editing. Maybe many of those people are in the cloud team, but all of that benefited us on server. So while the server part of the investment seemed small, we're actually building on the shoulder of giants, as we call it. Yeah.
Simple question: when will the mobile apps come to Server?
I'll be completely transparent with you. So it's one of those where we continue to explore and we're listening to feedback. Actually, the last day or two was really insightful for me. A lot of it will be driven by two things. One is customer demand, and the second is to make sure that we can actually offer something that will be viable in a behind the firewall. Like there's some nuances, I think.
How do you collect customer demand?
So many different ways. We have, our Jira.Atlassian.com. We have lots of feedback there. I think it's a highly voted ticket over on Jack. We come to events like this. We go to Summit. I have customer calls. All of these play in. So there's no magic formula that we use. But honestly, that's what I get paid to do. That's, as a product manager, my job is to understand all of that feedback and turn it into the right prioritization for the product team. So in terms of mobile, we continue to explore it because we hear the demand, but at the same time, we don't have anything to share at this moment.
What's your recommendation for people who want a mobile app?
I just saw a great. I know. Honestly, it was a great demo. I thought that was really cool. I've been enjoying sort of learning about Linchpin, and so that's definitely an option. So really, I just wanted to wrap it up. Again, thank you for having me here today. Thank you again to Martin and the team for bringing me here. The reason I made this move, so I moved from Seattle, I packed my family, and it was a big move going to Sydney. And the reason was because I saw the excitement and the opportunity to build some great capabilities in the server products. And so these are the kinds of events that get me excited and totally make it worth that big move from Seattle to Sydney. So thank you so much, and I'm here the rest of the day, so please find me and give me feedback.